Welcome to KRQE's New Mexico News Insiders, 2025 Regional Edward R. Murrow Award winner for Best Podcast. Here's Gabriella Burkhart and Chris McKee. Sponsored by New Mexico PBS.
August means the start of a new school year for students across New Mexico, and one of the biggest jobs leading the state's largest school district is the job of Albuquerque Public Schools Superintendent.
Yeah, and Dr. Gabriella Blakey has now been in the role for about a year, and today we are welcoming her back to see how things are going. So, Superintendent Blakey, thanks a lot for joining us here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
And as Chris mentioned, you were here about a year ago, but Chris, you weren't even here. You were just starting your role leading the district, and Chris was on paternity leave after just having had a baby.
Yeah, I missed you the first time, but thanks for coming back.
Yeah, it's a good measure of time now. Your baby's like over a year old. It's crazy. But do you feel like you're starting this new school year with more wisdom than you were in 2024?
Yeah, it's I'm just about a little past a year. So I started July 1st of last year, and I don't know if it's more wisdom, maybe more insight, and like more relationships that I've built over the course of the year with the community to really hear what people are expecting, what parents are expecting from us, and what we really hope for our students for this year. So I think over the last year, it's just really learning more and listening and trying to really move the needle on our student outcomes.
And we should also mention, as superintendent, that was not your first job in APS. Mm-hmm. You've been with the district for quite some time. What is your background with the district? What did you used to do? How do you sort of explain that in layman's terms to people? What did you used to do and compared to what you do now?
So I've had a few jobs in APS over the course of time, from teacher and principal, and then I went into district administration. I did leave the district for a while. And then my most recent job prior to stepping into the role of the superintendent was a chief operations officer. So it was kind of all the infrastructure behind the scenes of the district, and I had done that for 5 years.
So chief operations officer, you're making decisions about buildings and a lot of other
buses, food, transportation, all of the security, all of the things that are kind of like the infrastructure of the schools.
The glue puts it all together. What has been the biggest learning curve over the last year?
I think some of it is internal, just because I have been in the district a long time. I didn't realize that everybody has different perspectives as much as they do. I kind of thought everybody thinks the same as me, and they want change and they want to move fast. And it's been hard, kind of seeing the other side of things of maybe I have to get more people on board with this. And for me, I really like change, and I like to solve problems, and I don't think what we were doing was working, and for a lot of people that's really hard to make that mind shift.
Yeah, I can imagine it being hard because perhaps on the operations side it's a little bit more straightforward, about changing bus routes. Well, even that can present problems, I imagine, but when you talk about the substance of how to change education, there's a lot of nuance there, I imagine, that goes
right,
into
exactly. And it's and not everybody is on board thinking that change is needed, and that was kind of an eye-opening for me, is not always understanding the same sense of change and urgency that I see and that I feel isn't necessarily prevalent amongst everybody. And I think that was something that was kind of a takeaway of some work that we have to do.
I imagine if people don't agree on the problem, it's hard to get them to agree on a solution.
Right. Yeah. And for, a lot of people, the system may have worked for them. And so, I was in the district a long time, but always wanting to fix things or do better, or look at how we could do things differently. And for a lot of people, I think they think, oh no, the system worked for me. And it's kind of like asking your family to change something that they think works really well. And you're well, not everybody in the families, it's not working for everybody. So we do have to change things. And so that's been kind of one of the challenges.
Yeah. One other factor in this that I assume is a challenge. As APS superintendent, you oversee more than 140 schools, leading 12,000 employees. That is just a lot. I know you've mentioned before some of the feedback that you've gotten when school starts is that it can feel isolating sometimes when you're in, that individual school. Does it ever feel, though, too big to manage a district of this size?
No, it actually feels small sometimes because just like we always talk about Albuquerque, it's like a big, small city. That's how the district feels, because every time you go into a school, there's always this connection to a family member that somebody knows, or like somebody went to school there, and there's always like these histories and stories and connections. And so a lot of times, like, the school district actually feels smaller than it is. And when people say, oh, there's, 11,000 employees, I'm like, wow, that's really big, because it feels like we're very connected. I go to schools all the time, and there's always like connections with the employees, and employees have known me, or they know each other in different ways, and the families are connected. And so it actually feels much like Albuquerque. Like, it feels like a big district that feels small.
With that in mind, I think I know how you're going to answer this, but I want to ask you, one of the things I continue to hear as somebody who's now lived in Albuquerque for 12 years is every once in a while people say, this district is too big, it needs to be broken up. How do you respond to that? Should this district be broken up into multiple quadrants or areas? Because I think part of what fuels that is people see the successes of some schools, like let's say La Cueva tends to have higher performance metrics, versus then you see there are other schools that sometimes have other challenges. And so people think that, it's not working. There's these clear disparities between schools in different areas. Should the school district be broken up? I
don't think it's in the best interest of the community to break up the school district. I think it actually brings the community together to have Albuquerque together as a school district. It's very interconnected to breaking up the city, to breaking up the school district, right? We also are able to really leverage a lot of needs, infrastructure needs, particularly across the district, in ways that you wouldn't be able to if you were split up. There's in some areas that don't have like a lot of business, but they're more residential, they wouldn't be able to get as much assistance to like the infrastructure of the schools. And so there's like a lot, like transportation, food. We're able to do things that a lot of smaller districts aren't able to. In New Mexico, it's really unique because we have small towns that have multiple districts. And we don't see any difference in student outcomes, although, in fact, our schools tend to outperform the schools that are in areas that are like broken up in districts. So there's nothing like connected to student outcomes that's seen anywhere that would show that splitting up the district would cause anything. In fact, it would hurt a lot of the infrastructure that we're able to do now.
Right. Interesting. Well, I want to talk about one of the things that I know has been new this year. We understand you helped launch, I imagine with some other folks in mind here as well, but under your leadership, a new event was launched called Teacher Palooza, basically a huge gathering of APS teachers and staff. It was around 6,000 people, it sounded like, all gathered to celebrate the start of the school year in a sort of pep rally, perhaps, in the convention center downtown. How did that go, and what do you hope that people got out of that?
It's actually connected to what we were just talking about, like how we can create a community within the school district and feel like we aren't isolated, and we can leverage like the knowledge that we have by being such a diverse school district. I was a former activities director in my previous life, and I was a high school teacher. So the like assembly style is just something like natural to me. I had like the mascot walk me out because and that's kind of like who I am, is like wanting to have the high school experience. But more importantly, it was a time for our teachers to learn from each other in ways that they hadn't before. We have several schools that are, they could be small and there's only like 1 or 2 second grade teachers. Well, now they're able to like work with teachers from across the district and learn what they're doing and different strategies. And so they were able to teach back to each other in ways that we weren't able to do before. That was the best part. I mean, the assembly part is fun, and I was really excited to do it. It was a little daunting, and it's like that wasn't even all of our employees. But it was the teaching part of the breakout sessions and teachers being able to do that with each other. That was like something really exciting to do, and I see that we can really grow from there.
And did you learn anything from that event, whether that be good or bad?
Yeah, I learned that we have a lot to offer to each other. And I think in schools we can get really isolated. There's a lot of, I'm lucky because I get to go to schools every day, so I get to see like the positive things that are happening, but not everybody else gets to to see that. And so I learned that there are a lot of really positive things happening that other teachers can learn from. Challenges are very similar across the board. And so they're able to really share that. And it was kind of cool to just see us like kind of take over downtown Albuquerque, like to see all the buses come in and all the teachers there. And I think people were super hesitant about it, understandably. But once like it was pulled off and the team that put it together did it in 2 months, like people plan conferences like a year in advance for that many people. So we're really excited about where we can go based on the feedback we've had from it.
What was happening in the breakout rooms? You mentioned teachers were able to learn from each other, but like what kind of tools were they sharing?
Yeah, so teachers basically over the summer signed up to do a breakout session, and then there was a team that like basically reviewed them and then saw if it was something that there was a lot of interest in. And so they taught like different strategies in working with unengaged learners, or different strategies that they've done with AI was like a big topic. And so there's all these different strategies in how to look at assessment data, how to teach first grade reading, all these different tools that teachers have had. So they all basically put in a proposal like you would do for a conference. Then there was like a conference group that like reviewed the proposals to make sure that they were like aligned and that it was of something of interest. Some was on like how to access grant money for your schools and how to build a STEAM lab. And so all these things that schools have done that teachers have found to be something of value that they wanted to teach other people how to do.
Okay. Do you see this continuing, like this being the
I do.
inaugural
It was
event?
really interesting because after it was over, we had like a lot of staff that weren't part of it say like, well, we want to be part of it next time. But before we were doing it, they were like, oh, we don't have to go. And then once they saw it was something that everybody wanted to go to, now like we need to figure out how to make it bigger. And so that was about, probably 75% of our staff. So how we can include everybody in it.
We'll be right back with more of the New Mexico News Insiders.
Hi, I'm Logan Rader, host of New Mexico Living. New Mexico News Insiders is sponsored by New Mexico PBS.
If you like New Mexico News Insiders, learn more about New Mexico in Focus, a weekly hour-long show analyzing decisions impacting New Mexico statewide. Stream it anytime, anywhere. Visit nmpbs.org and follow them on all social media platforms.
Now back to New Mexico News Insiders.
Two of the big issues, I think, for families as school starts again and they send their schools off is safety and education. So let's talk about both of them. I want to start with school safety. What kind of measures are in place this year to ensure that kids are safe in the classroom?
Yeah, I think, we take the safety of our students and our staff of like a top priority, and kids can't learn and teachers can't teach if they don't feel safe. So we've done a lot of work over the past years of like securing the schools so that people feel safe. And we have these alert badges. I have one in my purse. And so we have these alert badges that all staff have across all campuses and all district facilities that they can call for assistance if there's just like a medical emergency, if there's a fight, if there's something really serious. It has a level of being able to just call for help from the front office to being able to call for help from like 911. And so having staff be able to do that, like one thing in emergencies is just like how to respond, right? And so being able to know that like at a click of a button, literally, we can give a response really helps the staff feel like there's like a plan of if something happens, but then prevention is key. So we've done a lot of work too to make sure our students have like a sense of belonging at school. That they feel connected to an adult, that we've done a lot of work on see something, say something, which essentially is if kids see something that doesn't look right, that they say something, and they really do take care of each other in that way. I'm always really impressed with how students feel like there are adults that they're able to say something to. And then we also have partnered with Crime Stoppers so that students are able to do anonymous reporting as well if they see something.
Okay. So these cards, you can literally just push a button and
Yeah.
okay.
So like right now, if I go to the closest school, if I'm like by the perimeter and I press the button, it'll like alert our dispatch and they'll come out right away. And it shows exactly like who pressed it and the location. And so it goes to our command center. We have a pretty like high state-of-the-art command center. So it goes to them immediately. And then we actually have a district like alert too that I'm on that I can see when somebody presses it, takes over my computer and everything. So.
Okay. Do all schools within APS have the same types of security systems, or are some campuses lacking certain features?
At this point, they all have them. Like we have the secure, like vestibules, we call them. We have card access. We also, all staff has the cards that are like you can be at any district facility. And so at this point, all of the schools have the same levels of security.
Okay.
It's the personnel sometimes varies. So like not all campuses have a police officer and not all campuses have security, but all campuses, like the hard part of it, the hardware, all campuses have those. And all teachers, all staff have the cards.
How many, roughly, if you know this number, how many school resource officers are being like dispersed along campuses?
We have school resource officers at all of our high schools and at most of our middle schools. And then we also have resource officers who like float to different schools. So that's if something happens at a school that doesn't have an officer, or just in the community, like of a stadium or something like that. So we have those officers as well. And then our officers are 24/7. So we also have there's the school officers, but then after hours, we have officers that patrol all of the schools as well. They also, I think it's important to note that our officers also respond to like any social media that comes about. Like at night, we'll see stuff that gets flagged, or a principal will reach out about something. And so our police officers are working 24/7, that they're able to do home visits. They're able to connect, if there is something that comes across social media. They work very closely. I'm like really proud of our community in the past couple of years. Like the police from the sheriff and APD and APS police all work really closely together. So if something is alerted, particularly social media, they're able to really like pin down exactly who sent it, go to their house, and be able to really address things right away.
We've seen some of the investments other school districts have made in this, like AI camera technology or body scanners. Is any of that in APS schools, and what are your thoughts on that technology?
We've looked at a lot of those. In fact, this morning I was at a meeting at the county, and they have one of the like the AI screener that is used. They're really, really expensive. So we have looked into that, and from our community, we continue to ask about it. We get mixed reviews on whether or not people think that they're helpful or not, or whether kids feel safe or not without them. I think the police in all departments are always like, you have to know nothing's like 100%. So there could be a false sense of security that if people say like, oh, they have a metal detector, so everything is fine. It's like everybody can get around anything. I mean, we know that if you have like an alarm at your house and something still happens. And so we really are just looking at like the different layers of security. It's not something that's off the table, but we continue to look at it. It's a very, very big investment. And so, and human capital wise too, right? Somebody has to watch it the whole time. And so we continue to look at those.
Yeah. And is there any other chapter next that you are looking towards security, saying we are going to make this investment?
The thing that we've done as of recent is to install a system of having clear bags at our events. I think it's something that people are pretty like accustomed to, just because anytime you go to a large event in the community, the Isotopes, United, the concert, you have a clear bag. So we are doing that in all of our sporting events now. And so I think that's like the new thing for this year as far as security is really starting with that in our stadiums particularly. Yeah.
I want to turn to the kind of educational outcome part of this conversation. We recently had New Mexico Lieutenant Governor Howie Morales on the podcast. He was talking about the state of education in New Mexico. And in part, there is that element of the low rankings that the state sees broadly when it comes to educational outcomes. So when families hear those ratings and they wonder, is my kid getting a quality education in Albuquerque? How do you respond to them?
I mean, I respond that yes, they are. There's lots of questions that parents can ask. I was a product of Albuquerque Public Schools, so I feel like now I have an advanced degree and I'm a superintendent of one of the largest districts in the country. And so I feel like, and I went to APS for elementary, middle school, and high school. So I do think that the education is there. I think that we have a lot of things to overcome a lot with some of our families, because if you look at those data, there's also this intertwine with a lot of the data that we look at for child well-being, for like economics. And so they're all intertwined. So we can't like piecemeal that like one doesn't impact another. And in fact, when I first came on board, I'm like, I've always heard about these education outcomes, but even in the roles I've been in education, I've never looked at like, well, what is actually like being measured, right? So I've looked a lot at different rankings and like what is being measured. Is it just standardized tests? And it's not. It's like all over. I mean, there's a lot of different indicators. When we pull out for Albuquerque Public Schools, we're in a consortium of the largest school districts across the country. And when we look at cities that are in that, APS and Albuquerque is usually like in the middle ranking. And so, yes, we could do better, but I try to look at like all these different elements of where we can. So for an large urban school district, we are like right in the middle of the pack. There's a lot of things that we continue to work on. I think the state's investment in early childhood is like showing a lot of improvement, and the investment in like reading. So I think as a community, there's parts of that we're seeing, but it's not just in education. We have to like focus on a lot of things to make sure our kids are being taken care of.
Yeah, and I've heard you and other district leaders, educational leaders say, that messaging of New Mexico is always last doesn't help, or it doesn't, give the whole picture. But some of those metrics are significant. I was looking at the PED measurements as it stacks up nationwide. We still have some of the lowest graduation rates in the country, overall low proficiency rates in reading and math. But I also want to say we've made improvements in those areas in recent years. What other specific metrics, though, are you looking at within APS to measure educational success of students and to really help boost those numbers overall?
Yeah, so one of the things we really look at is like our internal data over the course of time and making sure we're comparing apples to apples. Because a lot of those data, when you look at nationwide, like other states, the states even near us, Texas, California, their cut scores on their state exam are lower than ours. So here, if we're saying you have to be at an 80% to be able to count as like proficient, and in Texas, it could be 45%. So we're not comparing the same thing in the outcomes. If we were to drop our level of like from 84, then we're lowering our expectations as well. So it's kind of this like conundrum of what the assessment looks like nationwide. The cut scores aren't the same and the tests aren't always the same. The other thing that what we really try to do is look at our internal data. So what I always try to push, and I did as a principal and as a teacher myself, is making sure that every student in my classroom, every student in every school is growing, right? So and as a parent, like that's what you want to make sure is that you can't say, because we're human, right? And our little ones are human, that when you are 6 years old and 3 months, you're going to learn how to read a chapter book. Like it's not that linear. But what you can say is that when you get tested on an assessment at the beginning of the year, that you want it to be higher than at the end of the year. And so that's really what we're looking at, is how can we make sure that our growth model is like the growth is going up for every student in every classroom and not going down, and that we continue that trajectory of growth. So we report these to the school board monthly as far as, are we making progress on our goals? We look at reading, we look at math, we look at our college and career readiness. And really that's what we're trying to get good at, is making sure that we're growing. And if you see any like stagnant growth, that you're able to intervene right away. Because comparing like us to even graduation data across the country, I talk to superintendents everywhere. everybody measures it differently. Even within the state, we've changed the way we measure it. Like every year it's different. And so we have to okay, so what can we control? We can control when the student walks in first grade to when they leave in first grade, making sure that they made growth. And if we do that for the 70,000 students that we have in our schools, then we start to see that we can intervene if students aren't making growth and really individualize that.
What do you think is the largest change that you have made since being the APS superintendent when it comes to these educational outcomes?
I think the focus on really what I was just talking about is measuring our growth and being very honest about it. We present it to the school board. They hold me accountable for it. My evaluation is based on progress towards our goals. It's not based on how many podcasts I did or how many people said, yes, they like me. It's really just based on did we have progress towards our goals? So I think that the main thing that I've really done is to try to really focus. And that's, in education, every year it's oh, we're doing something different now. Now we're doing, it's no, we have a 5-year strategic plan. We have 5-year goals. We really need to focus and measure them and do because people get, I think, frustrated that we're not moving fast enough. So then they try to do something new. And it's no, you just need to stick with it and make adjustments along the way. And so I think that focus is something that is new that I've brought, that we have to do things differently, but we have to do the same thing now for consistently for 5 years to really make progress.
We'll be right back with more on New Mexico News Insiders.
Hi, I'm Monica Wicki, host of New Mexico Living. This episode of New Mexico News Insiders is sponsored by New Mexico PBS. If you enjoy New Mexico News Insiders, check out New Mexico in Focus, a great source for insights about what's happening in our state. Catch their podcasts and videos at nmpbs.org or stream it anytime, anywhere on the free PBS app. Now, let's continue to New Mexico News Insiders.
We're seeing a surge at some schools of kindergarten enrollments. I've noticed these are the pandemic babies now starting pre-K and kindergarten. Are you noticing a surge of enrollments district-wide? And how do you see this potentially impacting public school numbers? Are there enough teachers? Does this impact teacher retention, recruitment? What does this mean?
Yeah, we have seen an increase in kindergarten. The other great thing is that we've seen an increase in kindergarten readiness because of early childhood. So our kindergarten just started on Monday, so I've gone all week to kindergarten classes and seen that, and all the teachers are getting kids in routines and know it they're way different. We had a teacher who's been teaching 30 years, and she was just saying the difference between preschool before having it now, that every student, she had one that hasn't been in preschool. So kindergarten is really changed. But so we have seen an increase in kindergarten. We do have this new group of our COVID 2020 babies. And we've seen an increase in some of our middle schools as well. So how we track our enrollment is we do look at the demographics and everything, birth rate, and then kindergarten, because that group of kindergarten will be kind of what leads us through the next 13 years. Mm-hmm. And so we have seen this growth in enrollment. Our teacher vacancy rate, though, is the lowest that it's been in years. Last year, there was a point in time when we had 0 vacancies in high school. I think we had 3 vacancies in middle school and 5 in elementary school, and that's across 140 schools. So there's been some really good investment into the profession. That is because without teachers, none of these initiatives, and as a parent, you want to make sure your child has a teacher. Having an adult is great, but if it's a teacher, that would be, ideal for what you want to happen in school. So I think the rate of growth, it would be great if we're starting to get kids back into school, because we've just had a declining birth rate in Bernalillo County particularly. And I think that we're ready for it with this resurgence in some of the teachers that we're bringing on.
Yeah. With regard to teacher recruitment and retention, we put an ask just from the community, and if they had any questions for you. One of them I got was, what about special ed? Some say that there's a shortage of high quality special education teachers with enough support to ensure that kids are successful. Is APS doing anything specific to help recruit and retain like those specialized teachers as well?
So that's a great question, because special education is where we see the largest vacancies. We also, in Albuquerque Public Schools, we serve the majority of special education students in the state. So over 50% of the students with special needs are educated in Albuquerque Public Schools. A lot of the services that we provide, like in some of our facilities, are like top notch. So I see why people would want to come. But we have, and it's a large number, but we have hit under 100 vacancies in special education. We have a program called SET, which is a teacher residency program for special education teachers. It actually just started yesterday with the next cohort. A lot of our educational assistants who help in the classrooms go through a track to become teachers in special education. And I went to the opening for the new teachers and this year, and they raised their hand if they were what they were teaching, and the majority are teaching special education. So we've had this huge influx of special education teachers. We still need to get that number to be closer to zero. But we do have a lot of the residency programs in partnership with CNM and UNM particularly are focused on special education teachers.
This is a question I think that gets a little bit back to the broader, there are so many schools within this district that sometimes issues crop up, right, at the local level. We've heard from some APS families about these kind of last minute issues coming up, especially at the start of the school year, right? One of the perennial things we always hear about is air conditioning systems, but I'll save that question because I know that the district did something different this year to address it. But a few examples, though, that we have heard this year. Some parents hearing that APS had funding pulled for supporting extracurriculars like the National Dance Institute the week before school started. Then there's also, components, hearing at another school that parent volunteers were called to do some last minute cleaning of overgrown weeds on campuses just before the school starts. And there's obviously going to be issues that crop up right before the critical moment happens, right? Those kinds of moments, they really do lead families, I think, though, to say, no matter what the district says went wrong here, or whether it was in their control or out of control, that maybe they look elsewhere outside of the traditional public school and they say, you know what, there are charter schools that can do this better. There's private schools that can do this better. What do you say to those folks when people sort of lose their faith in the ability of public schools to tackle issues and they start to look elsewhere?
So I think one thing is to check on communication, because the examples that you used as superintendent, I haven't heard of any of those. So the first thing is to make sure that people are checking with their school principal, what's going on? Is this a human error? Is it up to a school principal? Did somebody leave? Because employees leave sometimes, right? Their families take them somewhere. So sometimes it's something as simple as somebody got a job and their husband got moved somewhere, so they had to leave. And so that kind of causes some disruption sometimes. So I think as a district, one thing that we try to tell families too is to always talk to the school principal and get your information from the principal, because they're the closest to the school. They control the budgets. They have access to all of the things that you mentioned. That's all school dependent. I think it's important to know charter schools are public schools too. They're funded similarly to us. I did work at a charter school, and so I think, options are for everybody, but options because of one, I wouldn't suggest a parent because of one concern that they're I need an option for my student. Options are really for if there's a learning style of your child, if there's something not working in the classroom that you're you know what, I need a school that's smaller, that's bigger, that has more arts. That's really what should bring parent choice. I think being frustrated over a weeds at a school is that's going to happen anywhere. So I think that that's not a good reason to change the education for your child, but really looking at what is it that your child excels at? What is it that they want in a school? Some some kids want really big schools. Some kids want really small schools. Some kids do better with, different learning. So within our like magnet portfolio of our schools too, we have a lot of different options. And I think people get confused with that. Sometimes like we have a completely online school, kindergarten through 12th grade. And so sometimes people are like, well, we're going to leave because we're going to go to this online school. And we're like, well, that's our school too, which is fine. People don't need to know the weeds of that stuff. They need to know like what is the best education they want for their child to be successful, and make sure that we have the option to be able to provide that.
I see.
What do you see as your biggest challenge this year? Like we're in August and we've got the whole school year ahead. What is your biggest challenge?
I think one biggest challenge is communication. Like just getting the information out to people, making sure that people have the right information. A lot of information comes to me that I'm always like, where is that? And I think getting that really a lot better and making sure people go to their schools for information. I was just talking to a group of employees yesterday, and I was like, I think it's funny when people say, well, the district said, and I was like, the district's not like an actual human. Like, who said that? There has to be like a human behind it, because a district isn't like a human person. So I think that like part of it is in communication. The other thing is we're really like revamping our high school experience for students by creating the academies of Albuquerque. And so I think that's like it's a good challenge to have, just in how we do education different for our kids. And so those are some of like the big things that we're doing that's a challenge, but in a good way.
Okay. What's your relationship like with the school board lately? I mean, we've heard some stories out of the school board that maybe there's some cattiness among some members, but I just was wondering if you had any insight or.
Yeah, so for this, the school board holds me accountable to our goals. And so, at our school board meetings, it's really focused on me doing our progress monitoring. And so from, I work with the school board as a whole. They're an entity of 7, and they hold me accountable to the goals. And so that's, I progress monitor. If anybody wants to see board meetings, they can watch it. But I think that level of governance has been really helpful to make sure that like throughout the whole district, we all feel this sense of accountability to the goals that the board has outlined for us. And so we are pretty committed to making sure that we deliver on those goals.
Okay.
I know you have limited time here. We appreciate you joining us. If there is one other thing that you just leave parents with, what would that be?
I would say to reach out to us. I think that it's hard when we don't hear, like I like to solve problems, and especially the team is working on solving like system problems that might be not helping. And so we have a new tool too on our website. It's called Let's Talk. So there's a button that they can press and it goes like directly to us. They can put in compliments, concerns, questions, and we can monitor it to make sure that people are getting responses as well. It also lets you rate us in customer service, right? Because I really want to increase like the level of trust that the community has in us. And so I really encourage people to use Let's Talk, because it's an accountability system also for us to make sure we're responding to the community needs as well.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
A quick update: since we recorded that interview with Superintendent Blakey, 4 separate guns from unrelated incidents were found at West Mesa High School and Albuquerque High School on Wednesday, according to Albuquerque Public Schools. A 5th gun was found just off campus in the possession of a student at Del Norte High School. All students involved were taken into custody and nobody was injured.
Yeah, so again, we wanted to update this because it came days after our interview with the superintendent. We know a teacher at West Mesa High School activated his alert badge, and those are the security button key cards that Superintendent Blakey was talking about in our interview. That key card was activated to alert APS police and security after someone reported seeing a student with a gun in the bathroom. The superintendent also addressed all of these incidents in a district-wide message. She has a weekly newsletter, and it said in part, quote, "Our see something, say something messaging is working, and it goes without saying that a single gun on any of our campuses is too many."
APS also says it is providing emotional support for kids and bolstering safety in schools to include inside classroom locks, training for staff and students, and a zero tolerance policy for any student caught with a gun on school campuses. The Bernalillo County District Attorney Sam Bregman is also pursuing criminal charges against a 16-year-old student from West Mesa High School and a 15-year-old student from Albuquerque High.
Yeah, it is a significant number of students to be caught in situations associated or in possession with guns. 5 in one day. Over the last 3 school years, it has been between either 12 or 15. So just having 5 in one single day within the first month of school starting is very significant. Yeah. So we'll continue to track developments in these cases, of course, in our newscasts. And in the meantime, if you have any story ideas, please let us know if there's anybody you want to hear from as well. I'm at chris.mckee at krqe.com, also at Chris McKee TV.
And I'm Gabrielle.Burkhardt at krqe.com via email and gburknm on social media. Thank you all for listening and watching.